Round and round the coaching carousel goes. We have a lot of openings to talk about today, not just at the head coach level, but also at the GM level, at the coordinator level. Black Monday over the years has really turned into like Black Sunday afternoon. Like these firings get announced quick and teams move even quicker to get their replacements. So today we're going to talk all about the openings, who we think the best fits are, and why changes were made in the first place. EJ, my friend, how are you?
Better than a lot of these coaches and a lot of the coaches who work underneath them who are now looking for jobs, but that is the reality of the NFL. And Black Monday is not a true thing. Owners will stand up and tell you a lot of things that are false. It is not necessarily a just thing. There are coaches that are out that maybe don't deserve to be, but it is a real thing. It is a perpetual thing. It is inevitable in the NFL. This is a competition-driven business, and if your team doesn't get results, changes will be made, right or wrong. Some of these we think are more in the right category. Some of these we think are in the, I don't know if I would have done that category, but we'll talk about them all today.
All right, we'll dive in on the other end of the intro. Neil, please, roll it. Welcome to the Bootleg Football Podcast. I'm Brett Coleman. That's EJ Snyder. Starting off today's show with perhaps the most dramatic thing to ever happen in the DMV area on January 6th. John Harbaugh is out in Baltimore. EJ, your initial reaction?
Wow. That's the biggest one. Is we're talking about 18 seasons, one of the most tenured coaches in the NFL. Baltimore had only missed the playoffs 6 times in that 18-year period. That's also the same number of times they won the division. So if you're talking about the scale, one side and the other, was surprised, but also on this very show a couple of weeks ago said, I think it might be time for a change in Baltimore, not because Harbaugh is a bad coach or the Ravens are a bad team, but that fit has soured to the point where I'm not sure it's tenable anymore. This team doesn't look like it's performing up to its potential. That is always going to be a death knell in the NFL. The Baltimore brass saw it the same way. There have been reports since he left that he lost the locker room, particularly a rift with Lamar Jackson. And when you have a head coach and a quarterback that aren't on the same page for whatever reason, we talk about this a lot with rookies, but it's also the same with veterans. If you have an established starter, couple of time MVP who is saying, hey, I don't like the way the ship's being driven, a change is going to happen. Either that quarterback is going to get shipped out or the coach is going to get shipped off. In this case, it looks like the organization voted to keep Lamar. John Harbaugh gets a new lease on life. It does create a very weird situation where Harbaugh is instantly probably the best candidate in this coaching pool, and the Ravens is probably the best job. So you're like, wait. There are some teams that will absolutely see it that way, and you know this. They are going to favor stability, the way it's been done, demonstrated experience over innovation and real change. So I'm not saying he's the best coach for the Ravens, but it's quite possible he is the most attractive candidate for many teams in this cycle. In fact, I know that to be the case. So it's a weird thing when you go, well, if he's the best coach and that's the best team in terms of the way they're set up right now, why aren't they together? And the reason is because they'd been together for 18 years and it just wasn't working out anymore.
I think what's most surprising to me is that it has been assumed that Harbaugh is the best candidate, right? And I think he might be the easiest candidate for teams to hire, especially from like a PR perspective, right? Because he's a big name. You know, he was at a very successful organization for many years. But if you're looking at what Harbaugh brings to the table, okay, he's not an offensive mind. He's not a defensive mind. His strength is supposed to be, culture building as well as in-game management. Well, last time I checked, there's been like 3 different mutinies from the players against Harbaugh in the last 15 years or so. Now, they happened to win a Super Bowl on the heels of one of those, but again, you had Ray Lewis and Ed Reed in the building and Suggs and Haloti and all these guys. Like, the culture was set, back in those late 2000s, early 2010 teams by all of their defensive stars, and you had Flacco and you had Pitta. Like, that was very much a player-led team, and even back then the locker room had clashes with Harbaugh and his staff. I mean, hell, they changed OC in the middle of the season because the players were damn near ready to revolt over that. Again, they won a Super Bowl, but that happened, right? And then we've seen like 2 different darn near player mutinies since then, including this year. There was well-documented tensions between Lamar and Harbaugh, and apparently there were documented tensions between the higher-ups and Harbaugh. Like there were stories that were emerging that, you know, he got fired because he refused to fire Todd Monken, which, by the way, totally separate issue. Why did the higher-ups want to fire Todd Monken? I don't know. That's something we'll probably try to find out in the offseason of what was really going on there. But I wouldn't say that the Ravens culture that we've come to appreciate has been set by Harbaugh over the years. I think it's been set by player leadership over the years. And at the same time, the other aspect that he's supposed to be very strong in, which is game management, he's famously been really bad at it for years and years and years at this point. Like, how many games have we got on here doing our recaps where we're like, I can't believe Harbaugh made X decision to punt or not punt, to kick or to not kick, to do this 4th down decision, timeout usage, clock management. I mean, how many huge games have they blown that they had 4th quarter leads that were absolutely inexplicable, other than Harbaugh made a really bad decision that put them in position to blow those games? Like, his game management has not been good.
I know.
What?
Ravens have blown 10 double-digit leads in the second half in the past 6 seasons. No other team has done that more than 7 times. So
there's a number to it.
Yeah, there is definitely a number to it, and likely that's probably the final straw. The stuff in the building, we all know that there can be discord, and there often is discord in NFL front offices, in NFL locker rooms, and winning sort of coats over everything like a coat of Bondo. But when you look at that ability or inability to say this is a game we should have had, and we are an NFL worst over the past 6 seasons at doing that, you start to ask the questions you're already asking, which is, so what are you really saying you do here? Back to Office Space.
So how is he the best candidate if the things that he's supposed to be good at, he hasn't been good at? Like, that's what I don't understand, right? Like, why is Harbaugh, and I'm not saying that you're doing this, but why is Harbaugh automatically assumed to be the most desirable candidate? When it's like, if he was good at the things he was supposed to be good at, he wouldn't be fired right now, right? So I just don't get that.
Yeah, pedigree, name recognition, stability. There are many teams in the NFL, more than I would say not, who value those things. And it is very easy to sell tickets if you bring in a big name head coach. Maybe not after the first season, but for that first season, which is what a lot of front offices care about when they are making this decision. And it's a lot harder if you bring in somebody that is maybe more promising, but hasn't had that track record of success or hasn't worn the big hat. That's the one that I think a lot of people put a lot of stock in, folks that have been in that chair for a while. It is, we know, heavy is the head that wears the crown. It is a tough role to hold in an organization. You are the be-all, end-all. And you're not sure necessarily how a 39-year-old wonder kid who draws up good passing plans on his whiteboard will manage when sort of under the weight of all of that for an organization. So I think a lot of organizations are going to lean for tenured folks who have that experiences, have built those calluses, who are good with the media generally. Those are important things when you're the head coach. Maybe not, certainly not to the Baltimore fans. Like, I know there are Baltimore fans in your mentions who are like, about freaking time. So I think Manny fans tire of that in terms of the strategy and how they see the game and the in-game decisions. Those things weren't defensible, but when you are deciding for an organization who your figurehead is going to be, you and I both know there's a lot more that goes into it than that, even though we might think that's the most important thing overall is wins and losses, and how do you either add to those or possibly, in this case, take away from some of those.
Now, as for best candidates to replace Harbaugh, me and probably every other person who like even slightly follows the NFL is going to point to Jesse Minter. I have to imagine he's got the inside track for this job. Like, if he wants it, I think he'll get it. I don't know who else that they would, like, maybe Clint Kubiak, because, obviously the Kubiak family has a connection to the Ravens. He's the closest thing I think this cycle has to, like, a young, energetic offense, like, the archetype that everybody loves. He had success in the first couple weeks in New Orleans when he actually had a healthy roster. And then, their health fell apart, including with Derek Carr. Went to Seattle. You and I talked extensively about how we thought that was a great fit, especially with Darnold's skill set and the receivers they had. Seattle's offense has been very good this year. So Kubiak, I think if he wants the job, it'll be between him and Minter, and they'll just have to decide which way they want to go. Other than those two, I'm not sure there's any, like maybe Hafley, but I'm not sure there's any other candidates that really speak to me as like Ravens head coach, right?
One thing that we've learned about this process, though, is that it's unique for every team. Every team values different things, conducts this search in a different way, has different, let's just say, past relationships that they either hold dear or don't hold. And that once the process opens up, whether it's for a head coach or a GM or even for a coordinator spot, kind of the gloves are off. We don't know what happens in those rooms behind closed doors. And sometimes there are things that occur in those search processes that we, don't see coming and really do turn the process, right? Guy sits in a room and wins over the brass, and they come out and make a decision that very few people expected. I don't think the Ravens necessarily are going to go that way. I absolutely am in lockstep with you that Minter is probably the most familiar, the easiest candidate. He's already been in that building. They know who he is as a person and a coach. History with the organization that was good, has had continued success after he left in his last couple of stops as well. So a pretty easy hire, I think, to sell with the fan base, which is also important. We just talked about that. So if somebody's the leader, I'm sure he is the odds-on leader. If they want to go a different way, I could see Kubiak. And then there's always just got to be that dark horse candidate who sits in the room and blows them away, and they say, this is our new direction. We're hitching our wagon, which is really what you're doing when you're hiring a head coach. We are hitching our entire wagon, our stadium, our ticket sales, our scouting, our everything to this guy. That is what the role of head coach is in the NFL. That is a tough job to hold, but sometimes enough can happen in that process that they believe that is the person to lead them forward. And that's when they make that decision. So I think your odds-on favorites are exactly that, odds-on. I wouldn't be at all surprised if Minter is the next head coach. Like you said, I think a couple of weeks ago on this show, Ravens fans are like, about time. We wanted this to happen a couple of years ago. Why didn't you do it then? They might get their wish.
Now, next job on the docket, this one's been open longer than everybody else. The Titans, they fired Brian Callahan on October 13th. It was like week 7, week 8, somewhere around there.
Yep.
So this one's been open for a long time, and usually when a change is made that early, it's because the team is like, all right, we got to get a head start on vetting candidates and, making phone calls to agents because we're not exactly allowed to call the candidates themselves. And I have to imagine by now the Titans already know who they want, and they're just going to have to go through the interview process to get to the destination that they've already predetermined, because that's just how these things work. It's the ugly truth of it. The question for me is, where does that, what is their ideal final destination, right? There's been a lot of talk about Matt Nagy being the candidate that they're keying in on. I'm not 100% sure why, but he seems to be very popular in this cycle. He's getting the calls from a lot of teams to come in. Again, I'm not sure I would do that one. For me, I would lock in on Kevin Stefanski, but again, it sure seems like Nagy's their top choice right now.
I'm with you here, maybe more so. It's your Harbaugh argument, except for me, this is Matt Nagy. Like, why are people calling Matt Nagy? Again, is he the offensive wonder kid? There's the second time around argument, which, has in the past worked very well. Pete Carroll famously, even Bill Belichick, right? But like, that's not what happens most times. We've seen that fail as many times, or I would say more times than it's worked. So again, go back to what's worked in his current stops. And like, the KC offense was not tremendous. And multiple times, Matt Nagy throughout his tenure as a play caller and a head coach has given up play calling duties. And in several of those instances, the team has performed better. And then he's taken it back and they've performed back down to the level where they were before. So I think Matt Nagy is a very good offensive mind. I think he is a very good offensive play designer. I think he is a terrible play caller. So again, if you're hiring to be the head guy, the arguments are kind of the same as Harbaugh. Is he going to come in and build a culture? He did build a pretty good culture in Chicago, at least in the first season. It didn't hold together, but nothing does through losing. It's the question of, if you're the Titans, what's the most important thing? Well, it's Cam Ward right now. You have a guy that has shown the flashes. You need a developer of a young quarterback. Has Matt Nagy succeeded in his destinations outside of Kansas City, where he wasn't necessarily the primary driver of that process with Mahomes? And the answer is not really. So if that's not the thing, and you don't think that the sort of overarching umbrella head coach description really fits him, like, why are we talking about him? And I think, as often happens in this process, there may be other motivations there. This might be a favor to folks in the organization. It might be a favor to Matt Nagy to sort of raise his profile. But you remember when
it
Eric
might just be that Mike Borgonzi, who's their GM who came from Kansas City, just likes working with Matt. Honestly, it might be that simple. Relationships in this business are a huge driver, and that is not something to discount. But you remember when you were saying in the intro about Nagy, you remember when Eric Bieniemy was a perennial head coaching candidate? Like, why hasn't he gotten his spot? And he got in a lot of rooms, right? He got in a lot of interviews. Never happened for him. There's a reason for that. We don't know what that reason is. There's definitely a reason or multiple reasons that didn't happen. I think that Nagy may track a similar cycle. Let's just say that. They also asked for permission to interview Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator from Kansas City. That, I think, might have a few more legs. But again, if your most important thing is developing Cam Ward, your biggest question to a very successful, very well-respected, very tenured coach in the NFL is, so who are you bringing in to deal with Cam? Because it's not you, right? Yeah. You can do the leadership thing, but how are we going to develop this very important piece that we have in the organization that looks like he has the potential to be a top half starting quarterback in the NFL, which is at one of the great rarities in the sport. I will say, so let's just say again, Nagy's the top choice and he's getting the job.
Okay.
What's the one thing that would make me feel better about it? And I think it's if Cliff went to Tennessee.
Okay.
With Cam, newly available Cliff Kingsbury. Now, is Cliff's offense conducive to long-term development of quarterback? Not necessarily. Again, it's very gun heavy, very screen heavy, very lateral. Like, do I think that it would necessarily develop Cam Ward's skill set to be the best version of himself in like year 6, year 5? Probably not. But it's a hell of a lot better than what they had last year, and at least it would get him stable, right?
Right.
And at least Cam Ward, like, he would have a competent play caller and as well as a very competent play designer, to your point with Matt Nagy. Like, those two guys kind of combining their skill sets of Nagy being creative on the whiteboard and Cliff just having a better feel as a play caller, that I think would be good for Cam Ward. But short of that, I'm not feeling too great about it. Now, that being said, now that Cliff is available, if Nagy gets hired in Tennessee, Cliff is probably going to want to go work with Mahomes again because that's just fun for him.
Sure.
And, if they're super successful in Kansas City with him as play caller, he might get another shot at a head coaching gig somewhere. But for me, if I was a Titans fan, I'd be zeroing in on that duo personally.
If you can do that, it does set up one of the oddest interview situations ever, which is, Matt, we would love to hire you as a head coach. We do have 2 stipulations. One, you come as a package with Cliff Kingsbury if you can make that happen. And 2, you never pick up the play caller's headset on Sunday.
Well, if you're bringing in Cliff, he's not going to.
I understand, and I would hope so, but Matt has gone back and forth across that line several times in his career, both as an OC, and he's even given it up sometimes then, and as a head coach, and again, hasn't gone super well. So that's a weird stipulation to bring somebody in and say, hey, man, we really want you, but you can't call plays. Like, that's just not a thing. So Very odd. It'll be interesting to see what the rest of that coaching interview roster looks like, who else they bring in. And again, I think this might be a situation where you do have, look, it's a smaller market team. It's not in the glare of New York or LA. This could be one where somebody comes in and blows them away and says, this is my plan for Cam, and therefore we're going to go as Cam Ward goes. And they buy it. And they go, we really like what this guy had to say. Might be LaFleur, the younger LaFleur. There are some younger.
The other LaFleur.
The other LaFleur, Kingsbury, Kubiak, whichever. But if somebody comes in with a plan and sells them that this is how I'm going to bring the Titans back to prominence, and they buy that, there are a couple of factors in this particular job that might allow that to happen more readily than a few of the others that are open.
See, I don't think Clint's going to go to Tennessee just because I don't think my brain could handle a Kubiak in that color. Like that just wouldn't sit right with me. I would hope that they would have more loyalty to the city of Houston than that. Clint, go to Baltimore, please. Just anywhere else. All right, Giants. They're also open as well. Joe Schoen is staying on as GM. There was a lot of questions if that was going to happen, and it's the Giants, so there's always internal politics that had to be worked out before I'm sure that was decided upon if Schoen was staying or not. Ultimately, he is. I'm not 100% sure who the shot caller above Schoen is at that point. Again, there's a lot of internal politics with the Giants. I'm sure we'll find that out in the offseason about who's actually in charge over there now. But there is a head coach opening. Schoen is going to be involved in that. I'm trying to put myself in the position of a GM that is on shaky ground, to say the least, and who really needs to nail this hire to save his own job in the future. Because I really do think that Schoen is like, you got one more year, man. Like, this Jackson Dart thing needs to work. You need to nail this draft. You need to nail free agency. And you at least need to show progress, or he's probably going to be out after this coming season. So if I'm Joe Schoen and I need to nail this hire, I'm probably thinking safety above all else.
Mm-hmm.
Which leads me two places, right? Kevin Stefanski or Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy, to me, has the overall better resume, not just because he's won a Super Bowl before, which counts, but they put together some really, really good teams in Dallas. Back-to-back-to-back years of 12-plus wins. Obviously didn't go their way in the playoffs, but Dallas beat the shit out of this Giants team for a long time with Mike McCarthy there, and they are very cognizant of that. And McCarthy himself, his offense has evolved, since the, I don't want to say, dated. It's probably the best way to put it. His late in his Green Bay tenure did feel very dated there. He modernized it a lot in Dallas. They were very productive. I feel like if McCarthy wants this job, Schoen would be inclined to give it to him because, again, he's the safe option that has a pretty good shot of saving his own job long term.
Yeah, solid track record. And you also need to think of it from the candidate's perspective. Again, I think it gets overweighted, candidates going, I'm going to be super picky. There's only 32 of these jobs on the planet. And if somebody legitimately offers you one, the temptation to take it as a coach is tremendous because coaches are always like, doesn't matter whether it's a player or an offense or a team, I can fix it, right? That is the coach mindset. And when somebody says, we believe in you to be the head guy, you want to grab at that brass ring. However, if you are a younger coach, that's going to look better. If you are a more experienced coach, you have to weigh, okay, so if we go in and we stumble in the first year, which is never the way you think about going in, but again, as a veteran coach, you know it's a possibility. Shane's gone. Does that mean I'm gone too? And people are going to approach it with that mindset of, am I going to survive? Who am I going to be working with next year if we don't have the greatest year? Whatever else. But Mike McCarthy, you said it weeks ago, I believe is probably the leader in the clubhouse for this job. We didn't know that Stefanski was going to be available. Again, very tenured coach, solid track record, instantly one of the top candidates in this category because a lot of the reasons that we'll get to for his firing were not his own design, right? Several of these coaches are sort of falling on their own sword for their own mistakes or their own poor choices in who they hired. Stefanski, I don't necessarily know that he fits in that category. So I think he's right there. He's definitely going to be on their interview roster. And I'd be lying if I didn't get excited about Kevin Stefanski with Cam Scatabo. That would be a lot of fun.
Well, why don't we talk quickly about the Browns, who, again, just fired Kevin Stefanski a couple days ago. But Andrew Berry got retained. A lot of Browns fans were also kind of surprised by that, too, because they thought if there was going to be a house cleaning, it would be everybody. And then immediately after Stefanski got fired, you started to see the leaks back and forth of, well, the Deshaun thing was Kevin's fault. No, the Deshaun thing was Andrew's fault. Actually, the Deshaun thing was the owner's fault. And everybody's playing the blame game because I don't think anybody loses their job there if the Deshaun deal doesn't happen, because the Deshaun deal set that franchise back, right? Lost a lot of picks, lost a lot of cap flexibility. They've been a truly bad team since that deal. Now, Barry did, select some pretty good players in this class, right? Like Harold Fannin had over 700 yards. Again, I still take issue with the tight end designation. I just want to call him a big slot H-back extraordinaire. That's fine. I said that he was probably the best H-back prospect since Juszczyk. Everybody said, no, he's a tight end. I still have a very different definition of what a tight end is. But I can just say he's a good player. How about that? We're going to argue about this till the day I die, by the way. We're going to argue about what Harold Fannin's position is forever. But regardless, he was productive as a rookie. Judkins was very productive as a rookie before, he had a really, really bad injury. I hope he comes back healthy because that one didn't look good. Shedeur had his moments, and I don't think it was as disastrous as the QBR suggests, but at the same time, I have no illusions that Shedeur's like a long-term high upside starter either way. What you're really looking forward for him in his career to be the most successful version of himself is probably being like a long-term backup, like a solid backup. And I think that would be good for a 5th round pick at quarterback. I think that would be good value, but I don't necessarily think Shedeur is ever going to be like the kind of starter that you're confident is going to go into Buffalo and beat Josh Allen in the division round. That's not where I see him going. But again, 5th round quarterback, I'll consider that a success if he's a backup. Mason Graham had his ups and downs. He had a stronger second half of the season than the first half of the season. I'm trying to think of who else. The Tyson Campbell trade. I thought that was good for Cleveland. So again, Barry made some good moves in 2025. It's just the issue that there's been a lot of really, really bad moves, right? Like the Jerry Jeudy thing has not worked out. Largely the quarterback situation has not worked out. Their offensive line is terrible, and all of their starters are free agents, and their best one got hurt in week 18. So like they're going to have to completely rebuild the offensive line. They're going to have to figure out quarterback because Deshaun's going to be on the roster again in 2026 for whatever fucking reason. And again, they don't have any receivers. So it's like, okay, Schlesinger, I forgot Schlesinger, great pick, might be their best pick this year.
Yeah.
But I look at, one series of good moves in 2025 doesn't outweigh the disaster that set up 2025, which ultimately is on Andrew Berry. I don't think he did enough this year to save his job. I would have just cleaned house and got rid of both of them. But somehow Barry was able to convince ownership that he should be given another shot here. It is what it is. And ultimately, where I'm left is, how desirable of a job is Cleveland? Really? Like, are they going to get somebody who's better than Kevin Stefanski? Like, honestly, I don't know that they will, right? Because you still have the specter of the Deshaun contract hanging over them. You still have to rebuild the offensive line. You still have to figure out receiver. Like, this offense is going to be bad. Like, you can't rebuild this offense at the state that it's in one offseason. It's probably going to take 2 or 3. And I don't trust Andrew Berry as a drafter to get them where they need to be. So if I was a head coach coming in, I would want final roster control over Andrew Berry for sure. And even then, I'm not sure that I would take. Like, is it really desirable at all? I don't think it is.
You want to build the entire boat out of Myles Garrett, Carson Schlesinger, a good running back who, if he comes back from injury, is hopefully going to retain his former glory, and you call him whatever you want, H-back, tight end. or 2 tight ends. Like, I like David Njoku as well. Like, is that what you want to build the boat out of for an NFL team? No. When we talk about NFL rosters and where we would place the most emphasis, it's quarterback, it's offensive tackle, it's pass rusher, which they have the best one in the NFL, and then it's probably corner, right? Those are the top end positions. If you look at 3 out of the 4 of those for the Browns, as you just said, they're basically empty. They're blank slates. And that's a tough task no matter who you are. And like you said, yeah, would you get final roster control? You probably wouldn't. But even if you did, you've got to get sort of like a 3-year guarantee, which isn't really a thing in the NFL anymore. Everybody expects results in the middle of year 2. Are you going to get that with the Browns roster as it currently sits, especially if you're, let's just say, at odds with Andrew Berry's design for it, which for the most part has not been great, was pretty decent this year, but again, probably too little too late for my taste. I would say starting over would be a good place to go because that does guarantee you the largest possible runway. Look at like what Gannon got in Arizona, right? Come in with Monty Alsenfort and say, hey, we're going to change this thing. Now, we're going to be talking about him later, so obviously it didn't work out, but he did get his full 3 seasons to try and turn that place around. And whoever comes into Cleveland is likely going to need the same thing. A lot of times we'll sit on the show and say, hey, it's not as bad as it looks. They're closer than you think they are. With a few green lights over the next season to a season and a half, this team could be very, very different. I don't particularly feel that way about the Browns. So in terms of its desirability as a job, not to mention just gestures and everything else, ownership and the Deshaun contract and everything else. If I'm a head coach, I'm approaching with caution. They're going to have to give me some substantial guarantees. And then, yeah, I would try my hand at it for sure, but it wouldn't be my first choice because you are starting with, in NFL terms, at least in a roster, next to nothing. You have some nice pieces, but they're not necessarily outside of miles at the most important spots.
Now, next up on the docket, we have a team that was even worse than Cleveland this year, like straight up embarrassing product on the field, the Las Vegas Raiders. I did not see that coming. I think everybody saw Cleveland's struggles coming this year. I didn't think the Raiders were going to be that bad. In fact, I thought they were going to be fairly solid. I wasn't expecting like a Super Bowl run or anything like that, but I thought they would at least be fine, right? I thought they would be a perfectly respectable, solid mid-tier team. But that was straight up disastrous, right? The offensive line couldn't block anybody. Ashton Denty, I felt bad for him. He was trying. He really was, but there was just no space for him to run with at all. So he had a very, very pedestrian rookie campaign when it comes to production. But if you're looking at the packs of lions that he had to fight off every single time he got the ball, it wasn't entirely his fault. I just don't think the Raiders were really in a spot roster-wise to take a running back there that was going to have to fight through that much contact just to get a yard at a time. Probably should have gone Armand Membu in retrospect. But even then, if you're looking at the offensive line coaching situations, like would Membu have even been as successful there? No. With Pete's son coaching the offensive line as poorly as he did. This might have just been doomed from the start because of that one decision to keep on Pete's son as the offensive line coach, who, quite frankly, was not up to the task. And that poor offensive line play kind of derailed the entire rest of the team.
Yeah, this team, unlike the Browns, I think, is probably closer than they appeared because they appeared nowhere near close. And again, it is not a talentless team. Does the team need more talent? Yes, they do. Do they need more talent than the Browns? I'm not sure that's true. They need better coaching. That is 100% sure. And that's ultimately why Pete got moved on. And we'll see who they choose, but they do have some talented pieces here. And if they assemble more of them this season, I think you could see a pretty big jump for the Raiders. Now, that's a low bar to clear given their performance, as you stated, on the field this year. But this could be the team we thought it was going to be this year, next year. This could be a competitive, solid, mid-tier team. Again, is this going to be somebody that is challenging for the division lead or going deep into the playoffs next year? I doubt that. You're most likely going to be starting a rookie quarterback. but I think you could see solid offensive line play, which would be a huge stepping stone. Just stabilization of that unit alone certainly is going to help a rookie starter. You've already got a very talented running back who showed his talent and is just looking for the opportunity. He's very hungry. He's a great team guy. But give him a chance. You've got one of, if not the best tight ends in the game currently. And look, you add some receiving talent. Yes, a couple of other offensive line pieces, and your defense needs help, but you could be a solid, competitive, entertaining team, which is really important not only to the Vegas Raiders, but also to the NFL. It is one of the premium destinations for visiting fans to head to. Allegiant is a tremendous fan experience. You and I have been there several times. Vegas is a very easy city to get to. This is a place where especially cold weather fan bases go, hey, our team's playing in Las Vegas in December. We should go hang out, have a weekend, hit some shows, eat some meals out, and go see our team play in Allegiant. So if the Raiders are continually bad, you might say, oh, well, that's good because then all the visitors coming to town love it. But the Raiders have a passionate and devoted fan base who are also really smart about ball. I have to say this about Raiders fans. They know ball. It's not easy to get one over on Raiders fans. And they knew that it was not working out. Believe you me, they told me multiple times, this is not going very well. And they, aren't ones to be lied to. And so Vegas needs it. They need to get back to prominence. Obviously, Tom Brady's involved. You keep hearing about that. He wants to do it. You know that anything he's involved with, he is not going to do in half measures. And the NFL really needs it. They need the Raiders to be competitive. The NFL is better when the Raiders are. I think they could be there more quickly than a team like the Browns. And I know as, beaten down Raiders fans after this year where your expectations were high and then you had to suffer through whatever that was, it might seem really distant. The prospect of being good again might feel like it's years and years away. I don't know. Really good? Yeah, a couple of years. Competent? Competitive? Maybe the middle of next season. We'll see.
Now, the main name being associated with this opening so far is Brian Flores for a lot of reasons, right? Tom Brady loves and respects him. They go way back with the Patriots. He did have a previous head coaching stint down in Miami that started out okay and then deteriorated rather quickly over time. He and Tua had a falling out. He also had a falling out with a lot of his own assistants there in Miami. And whether you're listening to what Ryan Fitzpatrick has said or, when you and I talk to our friends down in Miami, it's a fairly consistent message that he alienated himself from a lot of the people that worked under him in Miami, and it was a very toxic environment, not just for Tua, but for everybody. And I would like to think that Flores learned a lot from that experience, right? Because his only real experience, at least his main experience as a coach before taking the Miami job, was in New England, where toxicity was just kind of part of the deal, right? And you had Tom Brady there to kind of steer and guide the ship culture-wise because he was willing to kind of eat all that intensity, right? He was just kind of a sponge for that, a sin eater, as some people would call it. But when he went to Miami and he got out of that environment, when he was with a team that didn't have Tom Brady, I think he found out very quickly that that's not how 31 out of 32 operations went, right? And that New England was a very unique situation. And then he went to Pittsburgh, which again, very different operation than New England. And then he went to Minnesota, which is the exact opposite stylistically from New England. Kevin O'Connell conducts himself very differently than, say, Bill Belichick does. And I think the best case scenario is that he learned a lot from those last two stops in Pittsburgh and Minnesota in terms of relationships and how to get the best out of players without being like Bill. You hope that that's what happened, and you hope that if he does get that second opportunity in Vegas, that he has almost like a late stage Tom Coughlin approach, because Tom operated like that too for a long time, right? Whether it was Jacksonville or New York, he was that kind of coach. Some would call it a tyrant, some would just call it an asshole. And when Coughlin changed his approach, that's all of a sudden when the Giants started, winning championships against New England, ironically. So again, you hope that Flores has that Tom Coughlin-like arc where he learns from his mistakes in terms of handling relationships, and you still retain the scheme lord part of him, because he's one of the best defensive schemers in the NFL. So if you get the best of him from a defensive mind, but also the best of him from handling relationships, I think this absolutely could work in Vegas. The question is who's going to be the OC, right?
Yeah, that's the big hanging elephant in the room is, look, you're probably going to take Fernando Mendoza with your number 1 overall pick. That has to work. You can be a scheme lord on defense. We know that. Outside of a very few defenses, and we'll see how this goes through the playoffs, but certainly the Houston defense is the example where you can dominate on the defensive side of the ball enough that your offense can be pedestrian. That hasn't won for the last almost 10 years in the NFL. So it is the hanging question with Flores. But as you said, if he's going to make that late career turn, he's had some of the best examples in the business. He's got Mike Tomlin handling his business in Pittsburgh the way he does, which is different, but I would say also better than the Miami experience in terms of going to KOC in Minneapolis, who I think is one of the best people or players coaches. And that connotation might not be right, because players coaches usually means sort of kowtowing to players. I think that KOC understands how to handle people first, and they happen to be players that work for him. So again, Flores has got some really good examples to go forward. And I think he has to be honest during the process with Tom or anybody else, whether or not you think Tom's making the final call, and just say, look, Miami did not go well, and that was on me. Like, I was a young head coach and I thought it was my way or the highway. I learned that this has to be the entire organization working together, and I've learned that and had it reinforced over the last couple of stops. And that's really what I'm going to bring. I'm going to stay away from the mistakes I made very publicly, and I'm going to bring the positives from a guy like Mike Tomlin at KOC. That's really what he has to stand on coming into this, because his scheme stuff stands, film is film. Everybody sees the film and it still works. And he has evolved even since it, quote unquote, started working. And he has maintained that edge. And that's very hard to do in the NFL. Ben Johnson did it on offense in Detroit. Flores has done it on defense in Minnesota. And that is a very attractive skill to decision makers, that you can stay ahead of that NFL curve, because it's relentless. It is the not for long league. And to say, hey, I can stay out of the forefront and keep people nipping at my heels as a savant of one side of the ball or the other is really, really important. So he's going to have to sort of patch up the people side and sell that he has changed and wants to operate in a different way on that side. And if he does, he is a very attractive candidate. But yes, the elephant in the room is still, and so who's going to work with Mendoza? Because it's really going to be the ceiling on how far your organization progresses. If you have Flores' defense and somebody comes in that deals with Mendoza and gets him going on a similar time frame to a guy like Drake May or even Caleb now in year 2, that's a very dangerous team. A Flores defense with a capable offense, that's a nice match in the NFL.
My initial thought is Brian Dable, right? Just unite the Bryans, the former New England Bryans.
The former New England Bryans, yes.
Dable has worked with young quarterbacks before, especially big, strong arm quarterbacks like Mendoza that can push the ball vertically. He's worked with that kind of archetype before. And I think Mendoza he is not Tom Brady, but he, personality-wise, intensity-wise, passion-wise, he does have some Brady in him, in the sense that he can take hard coaching, like what Dable gives and like what Flores gives. And Brady's a very intense guy, and I think he would respect the intensity of Mendoza, even though Mendoza is like a little bit more of like a positive intensity. I think he could handle that environment. He is, for a young quarterback, he is different in that way. And so I think that would work. It wouldn't work with a lot of quarterbacks, but I think it could work with him. So bring the Bryans to Vegas is what I say. Next up, we got the Cardinals, who fired Jonathan Gannon after the season. This one's weird because I got the sense that Gannon thought he was safe.
Yeah.
Just based on his statements in the last couple weeks to the media and the general vibes in the organization, it sure seemed like the players like him a lot. Like a lot of players were very supportive of him, not as supportive of Petzing, but very supportive of Gannon. And it sure felt like Gannon was told, "You're okay." And then something changed in the last week. And I don't know if it was because, they had a pretty bad loss again in the last week, or maybe there was a coach that had become available that they didn't think was going to be available, and the Cardinals caught wind of that, and so they're like, okay, we can do an upgrade here. I don't know what the reason was, but it sure felt like things changed in like the last 72 hours.
I bet it felt like that for him too, because the Cardinals sent out the "Happy Birthday, Jonathan Gannon" message 24 hours before they fired him. It will never not be funny to me. I realize it's not funny for anybody involved, but it's just such an encapsulation of what the NFL is. Like, "Happy birthday, coach," and you're fired. Again, it did seem that and you never know, he might have been told to his face, "No, you're safe." Like, the ultimate death knell in the NFL is absolutely blanks our quarterback. That guy's getting replaced, or you're drafting a guy within a month. Like, that is the thing folks say when it is the shakiest. So who knows what happened. Overall, Gannon, 15-36 in 3 seasons. The biggest deal was they thought they were going in the right direction last year, so they were like, yep, absolutely, we're comfortable with the 3rd year. This looks like it's working out. Everybody's responding. To your point, the players are bought in, and a final season of 3-14 where the wheels really came off, and the organization has to sit down and go, okay, again, this isn't a knee-jerk reaction. He had 3 full seasons. He had choices on the roster. It's his guys, his coaches. And we were going in the right direction in the middle of year 2, which again is a very important year in the NFL, enough to get him in 3rd year. In 3rd year, you fell flat on your face. You won 3 games. You were the least competitive team by far in your division. Doesn't help that the NFC West was literally the best division in football this year. And it's just not a good look. It's very hard to go back to your season ticket holders and say, well, we're one more shot at bringing up the tail in the NFC West. So, again, Jonathan Gannon, good coach. Will he find work? Absolutely. I don't think he has anything like Flores's, reputation to kind of overcome. He can say, hey, to the day I was fired, I was in touch with my guys and they were bought in, and many of them were sad. If they ask for references, whoever the next employer is, I think you'll have a lot of people that worked with him in that organization that would say, no, I hired Jonathan again. And that's good for him and his prospects moving forward. It is disappointing. It's disappointing for Cardinals fans. I know you're one of the most underrepresented fan bases, if not the most underrepresented fan base in the NFL. Your team has not had a ton of success in a long time, and it feels like starting over again. And quite frankly, it is. Now, might you get an upgrade at head coach? Yeah, you might. There are a couple available in this cycle that might, turn your thoughts towards the positive. Hope springs eternal in the offseason, right? And there might be good reason for hope, but it is very difficult to say, we're doing this again. We're starting again. And the answer is, yeah, you are. And sometimes that's necessary. It would have been very tough to bring Gannon back after a 3-14 campaign and say anything like, well, we're pretty sure that, well, are you? The quarterback situation's unsettled. Your offense has gone stale. Your defense has been performing better. That was Gannon's specialty, but it's not great. You got talented young playmakers. That's not enough to sort of sell the overall direction of an organization on staying.
As far as ideal candidates for the job, I lean towards an offensive mind because, again, I anticipate Kyler's going to be somewhere else.
Yep.
And I don't think Jacoby's the long-term answer either. So I think they're going to bring in another quarterback, whether it's a Malik Willis type of thing or, maybe there's a young guy in the draft that they like. If Dante Moore comes out, I don't think the Jets would pass on him and then just let him go 1 pick later to the Cardinals unless the Jets brought in like a Malik Willis or something like that. So again, I don't think that they can hope for a rookie at 3rd overall. So they would be looking at like a day 2 guy and try to do what the Saints just did with Tyler Shuck, which is, okay, if you believe in like a Drew Aller or like Ty Simpson declared today that he's coming out. not a round one guy to me, but
Nope.
if they feel like they can get him at a value later in the draft and go really, really cheap at quarterback, again, either way, I still think like an offensive coach to try to maximize whatever the quarterback situation is next year would be ideal. So I'm looking at, again, a Clint Kubiak. Or if you're bringing in a defensive coach, like say a Vance Joseph, if you can get Todd Monken, who apparently is now available, there has to be a plan for offensive play caller that isn't Drew Petzing, because it seemed like that just wasn't going. I mean, the Petzing experience started out okay, and then it just it didn't even get better. It just got progressively worse as time went on. That to me was one of the boat anchors of this entire franchise the last couple of years, was just Petzing's deterioration as a play caller. They have to fix that first and foremost, whether it's with a head coach or with a defensive head coach that has a plan at OC. If that particular role, offensive play caller, doesn't get fixed, this franchise won't get fixed.
Can I interest you in a potential pairing of
Sure.
an offensive head coach in Kevin Stefanski, and knowing that the rookie class is not tremendous and that rookie starters take a while to get going anyways, that means you are looking at a trade or free agent to be your quarterback. How about Mac Jones in his Kurt Warner late career renaissance?
Well, the thing is, the 49ers still have contract control, and good luck getting Kyle Shanahan, of all people, to give up Mac Jones, his
To a
favorite
rival.
son,
Yeah.
to a division rival. I don't think that's going to happen.
No, it's not likely, and I don't necessarily think that this is the most likely destination for Stefanski either. But like in a lot of ways, I think Stefanski is the sort of juiced up version of what Drew Petzing was in his first 6 to 9 months. Like very creative run designs. A lot of people were looking at Petzing as like, oh, is he next? Is he going to follow that kind of Stefanski path? A lot of people thought he would. And just like we talked about with the last candidate, if you can't stay ahead of that curve, and Petzing, that's where Petzing failed. He was ahead of that curve very, very briefly. And then the wave crested and he was underneath it. And that's what we saw throughout the last season for the Cardinals, whereas when he started off, we were excited about those designs and it was really cool. We called them out multiple times on this show. Like, he's doing some fun stuff. Like, if he continues on this path, he's one to watch, and he just couldn't keep it up, as many coaches cannot in the NFL. And so it is going to take a reset. I think, again, some veteran option, because the rookie options, if you're not going to get to the top spot, aren't particularly great in this draft. Veteran coach with a veteran signal caller who's been there, done that, could get this franchise back on track again on sort of a Raiders-like timeline. Where are they going to win it all in 2026? I doubt that very much. Are they going to be a lot more watchable and competitive, even in a tough division? Yeah, and that's going to be a tough ask. Look, you got the Rams, you got the Seahawks, like you got the Niners. It's not a fun division to try and coach in, so that's going to make it not terribly attractive right off the bat. But the roster's not terrible. It has holes. And again, the big question is at quarterback, which is always the big question until you fill it. I don't think they're going to fill it this year, but you could patch it this year and be reasonably competitive next year, because I think they played below their talent level this year.
So if you're looking at points per game, they were 23rd at 20.9 points per game. There is no reason why an offense that has Trey McBride, Michael Wilson, Marvin Jr., like, they should not be scoring less than 21 a game. If you give that skill position group to Josh Allen in Buffalo with what he had to work with this year, like, they're scoring 35. And I understand the Cardinals don't have Josh Allen, but like, they got weapons, right? They've made investments on the offensive line. They've made investments at running back. There's no reason they should be 23rd in the NFL in scoring. There's no reason that they should be behind Washington, right? Missing Jaden Daniels for half the year, and like their number one receiver is gone for a significant portion, and you got old as shit Debo, and like their running game was inconsistent. Like, there's no reason that Washington should be scoring the same amount of points as Arizona. It shouldn't happen. So again, fix offensive play calling, no matter who the new head coach is going to be, and I think they'll be okay, because they do, to your point, have talent there. Like Monty has done a as good a not as good a job, but a good job developing the roster from where it was a few years ago when it was like legitimately a disaster. So I don't know. That's my thoughts on it. You want to get to shot of the week each?
Sure.
So as expected, we have a punter winning this week, Jake Bailey, who, by the way, just finished this season with a net punting average of 42.6, which is the best punting season in Dolphins history. Also, the more important honor, winner of the last regular season Woodinville, or second to last regular season Woodinville shot of the week for his effort to make a tackle down the sideline. Again, if you haven't seen the video, it's over on the Patreon. We put it up public. You don't have to be a patron to watch it, but we put it up in our public poll every single week. We do videos of every single nominee. Again, wasn't the biggest tackle of all time, but if you're comparing it to one of our nominees this week, for a punter, pretty damn good.
Yeah, and a successful tackle. We will have to say that he did, accomplish his task. And yes, when you compare it to the nominee this week, and, full disclosure, that's why that nominee is in there this week, because you were like, I don't know, did he really? And I'm like, he did. He did the thing. He actually made the tackle. So to celebrate, here's your shot, Jake. Well done. Sacrificed your body, made the play. All credit.
But I'm doing it in a solo cup because I can't find my glass, so I'm channeling my college rage cage days for this week's shot.
Channeling the beer pong portion of your existence. Good for you. All right, I hope it wasn't full for the sake of our show.
Our nominees for this week, as mentioned, Blake Grupe, which really it wasn't Blake Grupe, it was more Jalen Dowell for making Blake Grupe straight up bounce off of him when attempting to make a punter tackle. That's nominee number one. Nominee number two, keeping it with special teams, Cam Little's foot. Again, I think this is the second time we've done that this season. A 67-yard field goal that he made look shockingly easy this past week. He's going to hit 70 at some point. In fact, we might even see it in the playoffs. Cam Little just has an absolute cannon for a leg. Nominee number three, we got Tank Bigsby, showing that pass protection is not passive, doing it against Bobby Wagner, the future Hall of Famer. Now, Bobby did initially get some push on him, but Bigsby just kind of re-anchored, fork lifted him up, body slammed him to the ground. Again, doing that to a Hall of Famer, even one as old as Bobby Wagner. Massive props to you, Tank. And then Dallas Turner, our last nominee for the week. Boy, he had himself a great close of the season. He was billed as one of these like developmental, ultra athletic, like if you get the best out of Dallas Turner, he's going to be a perennial Pro Bowl type edge rusher. And some of the jumps that he got in this game, like it wasn't just about snap timing, it was just about the actual athleticism of him getting off the ball. It was breathtaking. He had a sack late in the first quarter that, they just didn't have a shot. Like no human is going to get depth fast enough to stop Dallas Turner when he gets a jump like that. He's incredibly athletic, massive upside. Could be a huge year 3 in 2026. So there's your 4 nominees. Again, if you want to see the videos of the plays, because we can't show them on here, go to our Patreon in a public post. Don't have to be a patron to view it. We have the video. We have the poll. You can vote there. And if you decide you want to stick around on the Patreon and enjoy all the extra bonus content we have for patrons, which I believe the last one we dropped is a deep dive into Fernando Mendoza. Of course, you can become a patron there. Now, quick update before we move on to division winners on the weekly Underdog contest. I'll throw the top 10 on screen here. If you won this week, again, you're getting the $500 in Underdog credit. You're getting the mini helmet. You're getting the bootleg merch. And I'll also throw the top 10 as it stands now for the season-long contest, which runs all the way through to the Super Bowl. If you finish in the top 10 in the season-long, you get a prize package as well, including the top 3 getting a full-size helmet. Grand prize is $3,000 in Underdog credit, and the grand prize winner also gets the last remaining bottle of the bootleg single barrel pick with Woodinville. Now, it's not too late to enter this contest. As long as you get to 120 total individual player entries by the time we get to the Super Bowl, which, I mean, if you're doing, a 5-pack, it doesn't take that long to get to 120, honestly, and it's only a few bucks at a time. But if you've been working at it all season, a lot of you are already over 120, but if you want to get into it late and get yourself into the season-long contest, it's still open. Link down in the description below. either way, everybody who has played so far, we thank you for doing that. It really does help support the show when you support our sponsors. And Underdog has also been really jazzed about this too. It's gone super well. So hopefully you guys have had fun with that so far. We only got about 5 weeks left in it, so we're going to make a really strong push to the end. And thank you once again to everybody who's played so far. Now, last topic of the day. EJ. I did not do so hot in division champion predictions. In fact, I went 1 for 8 on the season as far as my preseason division winner predictions. However, I will say, in the last week of the season, I was alive to be right for 4 of them, and 3 of the remaining 4 broke against me. So 1 for 8, not good. Not good at all.
Not great, Bob. Neither one of us did well. For your 1, I will see your 1 and raise you 1. I got 2. Not great, 2 out of 8. But again, these are the predictions we did at the end of the summer series before the season broke. And it's been one of the most unpredictable NFL seasons in a while, which, quite honestly, as content creators, is great for us. It keeps things fresh and interesting. And every year this happens in the NFL. 4 of the top teams become 4 of the bottom teams, and 4 of those bottom teams jump up and make playoff runs. And it's one of the things that keeps the NFL interesting week to week and year to year, is that parity. So again, going through the picks, AFC North. The Steelers actually won this division, but again, the Ravens were in it until the final week. Ravens was both of our picks, and I think that was predictable. We didn't see the wheels falling off, and the wheels fell off enough that they, as we said in the first part of the show, fired their coach of 18 years. So we weren't the only ones there. In the East, neither one of us were apt to bet against the Bills, because that's never a good idea. But the Patriots and Mike Vrabel, as we talked about in our Coach of the Year show last week, have done a tremendous job. They end up with the AFC East title. The AFC South, the Jaguars. Liam Cohen has reinvigorated Trevor. We covered that a couple weeks ago on the show as well, and that is good news for Jacksonville and their fans, especially going forwards. Again, when you have a hot young head coach who is offensive-minded, who has that sort of mind meld with your quarterback and has them playing up to potential, you're not just winning this season, you're potentially going to win down the road for the next 4 or 5. That's really, really good news for the Duval fans. We both thought Houston was going to be there. And to your point, Houston was alive. They needed Jacksonville to lose in the final week. They could have taken the division shot. That would have made us both, quote unquote, right. And again, right is highly subjective here. In the West, neither of us was going to bet against the bad man until he fell off the pedestal. The Chiefs did that. The Broncos take that. We did mention the Broncos as a strong and up-and-coming team, the team we thought would be second in that division, but we did not say they'd take the top spot, and all credit to Sean Payton and his organization. They have done that, and that, of course, was their goal heading out. In the NFC, in the North, neither one of us were confident enough in the Bears' first year under Ben Johnson to say they were going to take the division in what was the second most powerful division in the NFL. I said Packers, you said Lions. Both of those were very good bets at the beginning of the season. Again, with less injuries, who's to say? We don't know. But the Bears did do it. They took the NFC North title. As unpredictable as that is, I'm sorry. It's great content, so we're not going to say we're sorry about it. NFC East, the Eagles. We both picked the Eagles, and the Eagles did it. This was the only one we both got right. It was chalk, absolutely, but they did do the damn thing. So
hell, most of these were chalk, but we've gone chalk a couple years in a row, a few years in a row, and been mostly correct. This is the first season in a while where like none of the chalk happened, other than the NFC East, because they're the NFC East.
Yeah, and another piece of chalk in the South, the Bucs had won this title for a couple of years. We thought that would continue. Again, they had a chance to win it. Very last week of the season, they could have taken this title, but the Panthers, again, young Dave Canales, who has moved over, strangely enough, from the Bucs, takes it from the Bucs in that division, and that is really good news for Panthers fans. Now, did either of these teams have a great season? No. The NFC South, as it has been for several years, one of the weaker divisions in the NFL, but you can't argue with the division title, gets the Panthers into the playoffs. Again, we said Bucs. We were alive to the last weekend on that one, so not a bad choice overall, but all credit to the Carolina and getting through. In the West, the most powerful division in football, the NFC West. the Seahawks win this one. Now, I picked the Seahawks because I thought that Mike Mack was going to remember with a very bad taste in his mouth the fact that he almost won this title last year. Again, last week of the season, they get pipped by the Rams. I'm sure that just stuck in his craw as the sort of burr under his saddle he couldn't get rid of. And he was resolute that they were going to make it happen. Again, if you go back to the preseason, if you go back to August, tons of questions about this team. The offensive line composition, bringing in a new quarterback, again, losing an established starter. Tons of questions about whether or not this would all work. They had a lot of green lights to hit, but the strength of John Schneider's drafting and Mike's absolute brilliance on defense that was on display against the 49ers gives the Seahawks this title. You said Rams, which again was a really good pick for most of the year. Sean McVay is never out of this. They won it last year. He continually keeps that team competitive. They were competitive as well this year. Matt Stafford had an all-time year. My favorite stat was that everybody was really hot about Trevor's 29 touchdowns. And rightfully so. We just said Trevor played great. It's a career high for him. 29, awesome. Matt Stafford threw number 45 in the final week of the season.
I mean, if you're considering where he was at the start when we weren't sure he was going to be ready to play, like this is one of the most remarkable seasons I've seen in a while because like he could, like we didn't see him practice like the entire training camp. He was off in a chamber doing like Goku shit to get ready for the season. and then he comes out and throws 45. He sets a record for the number of 1-yard touchdown passes because he and Devontae were like automatic at the goal line. He just had a remarkable season. And I know that ultimately he's probably not going to win MVP because Drake May went nuclear in the last month of the season and the Rams were the first seed and dropped down to the 6th seed and they're going to hold that against Stafford. But my God, he had a ridiculous season, no matter how it ended.
Completely dialed, and we are going to see tons of the highlights from this year whenever Matt Stafford eventually ends his career. I'm going to say goes into the Hall of Fame. I think that's a lock, and we're going to see so many throws from this year because he was ridiculously dialed in as the starter there. But again, overall, we do this for transparency. We're making predictions in August. The NFL season is going to deliver a lot of things that we don't expect. Injuries, great performances, folks falling off at the end of their career. All those things have a huge effect where games are decided by 4 or 5 plays. We say it every week. And the fact that, let's see, I had 1, 2, 3, you had 1, 2, 3 teams that were still in it that didn't win it, that we guessed would in the final week, but could have. That would have been a huge swing. Could have been 5 for me and 4 for you, correct? Like, this is a changeable sport. It's a lot of fun. We do it in the spirit of fun, but we also want to say, hey, even though we concentrate on this league for a living, this is the best we could do. We were close, but no cigar. I got 2, you got 1 in the end. We could have had 4 and 5. That's still only like just barely a 50% or above hit rate. So it's a lot of fun. This was one of the most memorable seasons for me in terms of week to week, even late into the season, especially late into the season, week 15, week 16, saying, they did it again, game of the year, or I didn't see this coming. And for us, that makes it fascinating. We hope it does for you as well.
Before we get out of here, I want to thank all of our EPs over on the Patreon. Fitzy, Connor, Liam, Mike, Jack, Major, Owen, Spencer, Consti, and Eichen. Once again, thank you all for your support. Thank you to all of our patrons that come back for all the bonus content that we try to put out as much as we can during the season. During the holidays, things get a little bit wacky, but again, hope you guys enjoyed that Mendoza episode for all the patrons this week. And the playoffs are here, so brand new season. Everybody's got a blank slate, and we'll see where this dance takes us. We'll be back next week to talk about everything that happens this weekend. And until then, later.